So hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Christian Colburish of the Professional Development Corps of the DaCCoTA Community Collaborative on Translational Activity, and I'd like to welcome you all to this month's DaCCoTA Seminar Series. This month we will be talking about the research grant type awards offered by the National Institutes of Health, namely the R03, the R15, and R21. And in just a moment, I'll go ahead and get my slides ready and we'll get started. As I said earlier, in this month's installment of the DaCCoTA Seminar Series, we'll be taking a look at the three most popular research grants offered by the NIH, the R03, the R15, and R21. We'll look into considerations for each of these grants to help you make the decision if they're right for you, and resources to help you apply for these grants if you so choose. I'd like to remind everyone in the audience today that the DaCCoTA Seminar Series is supported by suggestions from viewers, such as everyone in chat right now. And if you have an idea for a seminar, we'd be glad to produce it. As with all DaCCoTA Seminar Series seminars, slides are available upon request. They're great to look back to, and if you have questions later, it's a great reference for follow-up. And they're chock full of resources. I know mine today certainly are. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to spend a moment thinking about all the scenarios we find ourselves in as we're trying to conduct research, finance our laboratory operations, and take care of business every day in research. Sometimes we have these aspirations that surpass the resources we have available. At a lot of our institutions, there's these readily available seed grants for nominal amounts, say $10,000 or $20,000, but I see them used mostly to augment already awarded grants. So say it might be used for salary support or an equipment purchase or travel. So a seed grant of $10,000 to $20,000 seldom initiates new research. On the other hand, awards such as the NIH R01, which is an award that's 5 years in maximum duration, require preliminary data with the intent of supporting a discrete, specified, circumscribed project per the investigator's interest. Therefore, there is a need for a mechanism that bridges the gap of time, funding, and intention. And there's always the need to keep a lab operating without a lapse in funding. And it's true, an R01 lasts for 5 years, but it feels like 3 when you need to plan the renewal, and more often than not, a resubmission of the renewal application that odds are won't succeed. When R01s are returning unfunded, a researcher needs to do whatever is necessary to keep their budgets in the black. There's also a desire to perform research that leads to novel and innovative breakthroughs that will take biomedical science to new paradigms. And R01 is intended for well-established methods and well-established fields. So there exists a need for an award that will support high-risk, high-reward research and provide pathways for exciting discoveries from these findings. So the first research grant that we'll be discussing is the R03, which is the NIH's Small Grant Program. The purpose of the R03 is to support small research projects that can be carried out in a short period of time with limited resources. These projects don't require preliminary data, so the R03 research generates the preliminary data that can support further research and future innovations in short order. Therefore, an R03 can easily lead to a well-founded R01 application. The R03 offers numerous scopes for research as listed here, ranging from data analysis to development of technologies and methodologies. The scope of all these scopes that you see listed here will all depend on the IC issuing the FOA. And as part of today's presentation, I'd like to provide you with examples of awards we'll be discussing today. So to place the R03 in today's research led by the University of California, Irvine shows low-level radon exposure is still a leading cause of cancer. The difference in the research that was conducted and financed by this award is that prior studies relied heavily upon information that was collected when radon exposures were high and poorly estimated. This international team focused on over 57,000 contemporary miners working in Canada, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, and the United States to conduct a pooled analysis of cohort studies. The analysis included 1.9 million person years of observation. If you'd like to take a closer look at this R03 award, I have links to the University of California Irvine press release, the Environmental Health Perspectives article that resulted from this research, and the R03's listing in NIH's Reporter. For all the articles I'll mention today, their press releases and NIH Reporter listings will be available, except in the case of the R21 article, as that award was awarded this month and is too new for a Reporter listing. We'll take a look at the characteristics of the R03 per its parent announcement. It's a short duration at 2 years maximum and thrifty at $50,000 per year maximum in direct costs. While the parent announcement mentions numerous IC, not every IC participates in the parent announcement, but the ICs not included in the parent announcement may issue FOAs to meet their needs. I calculated the average and standard deviation of application success rate from the NIH data book, and some FOAs got 100% success, whereas others got 0% success rates, which explains the standard deviation. After 2 years, the R03 concludes without the possibility of renewal. For considerations, the advantage of the R03 and the R15 and the R21 is that you don't need preliminary data. So you can draft 6 pages of research strategy. It's going to be 12 pages in the case of the R15 and apply to the parent announcement at will. As always, having preliminary data is an advantage because the data supports the approach and feasibility. But the trick is determining how much and what kind of preliminary data to use in application to support the specific aims. And the only answer that anyone can really come up with is that it's up to the PI writing the application using the advice available to them from colleagues and NIH staff. If you were to receive the R03, the NIH would still consider you a new investigator because of the fact that the R03 isn't substantial independent NIH funding. So you can still qualify for the new investigator and early stage investigator pay line when you go to apply for your R01. This fact is true for all awards. And the R03 allows you to have a maximum of 50 in direct costs a year. The NIH program officer listed in the FOA can help you determine if the R03 is the right project for you. The next award we'll discuss today is the R15 Research Enhancement Award. This is the most complex award we'll be talking about today because depending on how much NIH funding institution or components of an institution receive in the last 4 out of 7 past fiscal years, you may not be able to apply for this award. The purpose of the R15 is to support research in places that don't often receive NIH funding. Good research is happening all over the world, and NIH would like to be a part of it. Even more important is the element of the future. A student's first time in an R15 funded laboratory may inspire them to pursue research as a career. And if it weren't for the R15 award, that realization wouldn't have occurred, and that's an immeasurable loss. And likewise to our discussion on the R03 grant, I'd like to give you an example of a recent R15 grant. From this receipt of over $1 million to Eastern Tennessee State University earlier this summer, Dr. Valentin Yevakenko received an R15 to study how one protein plays a role in inflammation, which can lead to a new anti-inflammatory treatment. This project will be led by one of Dr. Yakovenko's doctoral students, and the medical students' earlier research informed this R21 application. The R15s break down into two pathways: the Academic Research Enhancement Award, or AREA, and the Research Enhancement Award Program, or REAP. The AREA is primarily intended for institutions that primarily serve undergraduate students. So the first consideration before applying is the question, is the undergraduate enrollment at a given component of an institution greater than graduate enrollment? Undergraduate enrollment must exceed graduate enrollment at this component. In order for an institution to be eligible for AREA awards, all of the non-health professional components of the institution together must not have received support from the NIH totaling more than $6 million per year in both direct and indirect costs in the last four of the last 7 fiscal years. Faculty with a primary appointment in a non-health professional or non-graduate school are only eligible for the AREA awards. And the REAP is primarily intended for health professional schools and graduate schools as part of that umbrella institution. When NIH says health profession, they mean nursing, medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, and the like. And the FOA goes in depth on this. In order for an institution to be eligible for REAP, the applicant umbrella institution, meaning both the health profession and non-health profession components, must not have received support from the NIH totaling more than $6 million per year in both direct and indirect costs in 4 of the last 7 fiscal years. Faculty with a primary appointment in a health professional school or graduate school are only eligible for the REAP awards. So since I'm located at the University of South Dakota, I decided to find out if USD is eligible for R15s, and if so, which one, or perhaps both. AREA and REAP awards are intended to be mutually exclusive, but some umbrella institutions are eligible to receive both R15 awards. NIH provides instructions on how to perform a pivot table extract of all of the NIH funding your institution has received over the last 7 fiscal years, which is included in the slide and show resources I have today. The current fiscal year doesn't count. I followed their directions to make a pivot table in Excel from the data I exported from NIH's reporter, and I came up with this conclusion. USD is eligible for the AREA awards since the schools of arts and sciences, so that's non-health profession and non-graduate school, received less than $6 million in 4 of the last 7 fiscal years. In this case, USD schools of arts and sciences remain below the $6 million threshold for all 7 fiscal years. However, the PI must have a primary appointment in a component, non-health professional and non-graduate school. And in that component, undergraduate enrollment needs to exceed graduate enrollment. And as a caveat, USD isn't eligible for the REAP award since the schools of medicine and schools of arts and sciences combined received more than $6 million in direct and indirect NIH funding in 6 of the last 7 fiscal years. And if you want to be certain before you start writing an AREA REAP award, reach out to your grants office and they'll come up with a determination for you. And you'll need to come to that step eventually because the university provo, or commonly known as the vice president of academic affairs, will have to affirm that the institution and your appointment is eligible for either area or REAP awards. So compared to the R03, the R15 provides additional possibilities with greater funding, greater duration, and the opportunity for renewal to multiple award periods. There is an apparent announcement for the R15, which is unlike other research grant series awards because of the dual pathways of area and REAP. Most of the ICs do participate in the R15, and there is no requirement for preliminary data. I've been through the NIH data book again. Just like with the R03s, some FOAs got 100% success and others got 0% success, which is why we have the average. It's standard deviation. For considerations, when all said and done, the R15 is a great way to support student research in places that don't receive a lot of NIH funding, and they strengthen the research environment at that institution. This is all about creating an opportunity for students that otherwise wouldn't exist without this award. As you're thinking about how to strengthen the research environment, it's important to keep in mind that the R15 isn't the same as a training or fellowship grant. So going into detail about curriculum or professional development for students, that's not what they're asking for. One of the flaws that come up in R15 applications, according to NIH, is that some applications mention a lot of collaborators that are outside of the institution. And that ratio is that there are more collaborators in the application outside the institution than there are at the institution applying for the award. And if you're trying to strengthen the research environment at your institution, wouldn't you want as many collaborators at your institution participating in the application as much as possible? So for a few more, what they're going to look for when you're going through the application is how the research is student-centered, since that's a major part of the R15. For area, the undergraduate students must be involved, and the research team for the area award must be composed primarily of undergraduate students. For the REAP award, that team can be both undergraduate and graduate students, so you don't have to manage a ratio there. For ways to get students involved can include presenting at meetings. That doesn't have to be a national event. They can be small campus events. They can help design experiments, collect and analyze data, and write manuscripts. Students must also be compensated for their work in connection with the grant. They can be paid, they can receive credit hours towards graduation, and even room and board for summer research. The only exception to this is stipends. Stipends cannot be drawn from the R15 funds. And the last thought is back to the character of the PI. So how is the PI demonstrating how they're student-centered in their research? It comes out in the biosketch, and it ought to show a history of mentoring students, even co-authoring with them. And that needs to be made apparent to the study section, and it will come out in the biosketch. Going into detail on where former mentee students have gone is nice as well. And the cherry on top is that recruitment plan. So specifically, what steps can a PI take to ensure good recruitment if that undergraduate team isn't already assembled? You gotta be specific. Being vague won't do. And for the last grant we'll talk about today is the R21 Exploratory Developmental Research Grant. The R21 supports exploratory and developmental research projects by providing support for the early and conceptual stages of these projects. These studies may involve considerable risk, but may lead to a breakthrough in a particular area, or to the development of novel techniques, agents, methodologies, models, or applications that could have a major impact on a field of biomedical, behavioral, or clinical research. Because of this award's high risk, high reward purpose, research priorities will differ from those found in the R01 applications. For the last example grant that we're looking at, we have an R21 awarded to Dr. Bryce E. Dixon at the Marshall University and Jones V. Edwards School of Medicine to study the genetic and genomic mechanisms driving the relationship between social reward and cocaine addiction. Dixon states, the successful completion of this project will provide a foundation for future deep characterization of identified genetic mechanisms driving the preference for a social reward over a drug reward in mice, and contribute to the development of novel, more effective addiction treatments. So this gives back to the high risk, high reward nature of the R21. If Dr. Dixon can succeed, we'll have significant strides accomplished in treating drug addiction, which is sorely needed. As with all others, I can give you the press release, and for the NIH reporter listing, this one isn't in reporter just yet because it's just such a new R21. The R21 differs from the R03 on the emphasis of the novel and exploratory scope of research. A short-term project using widely accepted approaches and methods are better suited for the R03 because the risk isn't present. And the R21 differs from the R01 because the R21 is a short-term project on the novel and exploratory, rather than a long-term project in a well-established area. Not every IC participates in the parent announcement, but the ICs not included in the parent announcement may issue FOAs to meet their needs, as with the R03s and R15. So you're always going to be searching on NIH's grants website to find them when they are unveiled. What's exceptional about the R15 parent announcement is that one parent announcement requires human studies research, and most of the time, parent announcements, they delineate between whether or not a clinical trial is required or allowed. You just don't see that much. Something exceptional about the R21 is the fact that the number of ICs vary by the parent announcement to clinical trial stipulations. Out of all the awards we discussed today, R21s have the lowest success rate. And just like the R03, it isn't renewable. And a big reason why R21s don't succeed is because of the over ambition that often comes out in applications. An exaggeration that's often said is most of the ideas are 10 years into the future and will require $10 million, but the R21 scope is so much more focused than that. So it'll take refinement and revision to ensure success. So for considerations, the goal of the R21 is high risk, high reward breakthroughs leading to novel innovations. So this is all a question of developing a good idea through the aims and a research strategy that balances the limited budget and time. Just like the R03, if you can't demonstrate feasibility within constraints, the application is a non-starter. But something to think about with the R21 is the future. If you succeed in an R21 grant, and given the fact that it's not renewable, the NIH provides additional funding through the R33 award. So that's Exploratory Developmental Grants Phase II. And that's a continuation of primarily R21 research that has overcome feasibility gaps. Through the R33, you can continue your R21 research and continue to create new paradigms. I took a look at 7 of the R33 only FOAs on the NIH Grants site, and I came up with average durations and funding levels seen here. 3 years on average with varying direct cost thresholds, maybe even more than you could request with an R01 application in some of the outliers. One outlier I saw had a yearly direct cost maximum of $1.5 million, but some FOAs don't offer a direct cost maximum, and they only have to reflect the needs of the project. And this is the fork in the road between taking your R21 data and going to an R01 or an R33. You could go off to an R01 and receive the long-term stability that it offers, or go forth with an R33 that gives you less time but more funding because of the breakthrough potential that we may be able to justify. The odds of receiving an R33 are 36.7% with a standard deviation of 34.7%. You can apply for an R01 following the R21, but the odds are a 5% chance of success in turning an R21 research into a funded R01 application. And before we part today, before we go into questions and answers, of course, I'll give you links to all of the NIH resources I used to create this presentation. So you can come to your own conclusions about where you'd like to go forth to in your research journey. I'll also give you slides on how to write specific aims, resources that you can find at the Professional Development Core. In my core, I can connect anyone with, say, a mock peer review. I could review specific aims. I could help you find consultation from experts near and far to give you perspective on your forthcoming proposals, whatever they may be. And after that, let's go into some Q&A. So hello again. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Christine. It's very good talk. Thank you for the information.
Hi, Dr. Razvani. How are you doing today?
Fine, very well. How are you doing?
Awesome. What you know?
Good. So I just wanted to give a comment. I was in the study section of R03, at least for the NCI. I had this experience that the presence of the preliminary data and actually heavy preliminary data these days is necessary for R03. This is unfortunate, but this is my experience last year when I was in a study section. Basically, R03 looks like a mini R01 in terms of preliminary data. Otherwise, they don't pay attention if there is not a convincing preliminary data. I just wanted to share my experience.
This was last year, right?
Yeah, it was last year. This is NCI R03, right, not the other study section. Maybe it's different, but in NCI, I really felt that they look for a kind of R01 preliminary data, and I never seen a R03 without preliminary data, with heavy preliminary data.
So if you're it's going to send an application off to the NCI, anything without preliminary data sounds like a non-starter. And yeah, I'm glad you're providing that perspective today, Dr. Razvani. Spoken from the front, it doesn't get much better than that. Thanks again.
No problem, my pleasure.
So much.
So I have also a question that when you said that School of Art and Science, the biochemistry department in USD is under a School of Science. So I'm trying to see whether, for example, Dr. Sereda can apply for an R15 or not.
R15, that would have to depend on Dr. Sereda's primary appointment as well. whether that would be considered a graduate school or not. And just to be certain before going forth with an application or drafting anything, I would just go right to ORSP. They could tell you straight what is possible and what isn't, just to make sure before we go forth and draft an application that we can't submit. So just to put a rubber stamp on it, more or less. They can help you out.
Yeah, the pay line is very good. I mean, compared to the other type of pay line, 22, it's very good pay line.
Oh, beautiful. Does anyone else have any questions today?
I have, I suppose, a follow-up question. First, Christian, thank you. This is excellent. And my question actually, I suppose, bounces off Dr. Rezvani's comment. So that's interesting that you're seeing that preliminary data is required for a grant mechanism, which, if I understood correctly, is to collect preliminary data, the R03. I'm curious, when we say preliminary data going into a grant like that, what level of data, how many subjects, how convincing do you need to be?
And that's a question that would be best answered by the NIH program officers that you could find in Section 7 of any FOA. Preliminary data in its form, it's all about justifying feasibility and the approach, and there's just no good one-size-fits-all answer to that.
I see.
Sorry to say.
Okay, well, that's helpful to hear. Thank you.
Anyone else have any further questions? If there are no further questions from the audience, I'd like to welcome everyone to the dog days of summer. Soon school will be starting again. It'll be fall just before you know it. Ready for colorful leaves and bonfires and spooky stories. We'll be there soon enough. As always, I'd like to end with keep working hard and keep rocking the research. We will get this done. Have a great Thursday, everyone. Bye-bye.